Top 10 Secrets and Mysteries. Mysteries of Ancient Cultures. Homo sapiens appeared on Earth after the last evolutionary phase of the Neanderthals and lived for thousands of years in small, close-knit groups of hunters and gatherers. A sudden and radical change finally occurred, and large, differing civilizations grew up as man developed and settled. Each of these civilizations had its own myths about how the gods descended to Earth and created mankind in their own image. Lemuria. The debate about whether a mythical lost continent called Lemuria ever existed has been going on for over a century. This ancient continent, said to have sunk to the bottom of the ocean during a gigantic catastrophe, has been variously located in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific, but most commonly in the area between Sri Lanka and Madagascar. I'm getting close to a conviction that this is a mysterious civilization lost in a tectonic deformation in the Pacific Ocean. Atlantis could be modeled on it. This lost civilization owes its name to a purely scientific dispute. In the 19th century, a biogeographer could not explain how the bones of lemurs ended up in India, since Madagascar was the only place where the animals lived. The famous Russian occultist, Madame Blavatsky, claimed that she had been able to look into the secret book of Xian in one of her mystical trance states. According to her, the inhabitants of Lemuria were one of the 7 original races. They were approximately 2-meter-high hermaphrodites who lived in the Tertiary geological period. Unlike the Atlanteans, who were their descendants, the Lemurians were not particularly intellectually advanced. Although there is no proof of the existence of Lemuria, often called the Land of Mu, plenty of people are in no doubt it really existed. This is because it survives in the mythology and legends of India, and in the stories of the Australian Aborigines, the native peoples of Polynesia, and even the Native Americans. We can still guess at what the cause of the disappearance of Lemuria was. Legends tell us that the gods were dissatisfied with the behavior of the inhabitants of Lemuria, and so they punished them with a devastating earthquake. But was it caused by gods or by aliens terminating one of their experiments? Indus Valley Civilization. In this list of the top 10 mysteries, we cannot omit the biggest of the ancient urban civilizations. The Harappa civilization, which spanned southeastern Pakistan and western India, reached a high level of development around 3000 to 2500 BC, at a time when people in Europe were still living in mud huts. This civilization built about a dozen big cities that were made of bricks and featured their own sewage system, a sophisticated street layout, and even private bathrooms. However, there's a lot that archaeologists still don't know about the Harappa. Tablets with inscriptions have been found, but the writing system itself has not yet been deciphered. The majority of Harappa artifacts, including the capital city, still await discovery. To put things in perspective, there were around 50,000 people living in the biggest city of Mohenjo-Daro, located on the river Indus. The end of the civilization was apparently caused by a great drought, sometime around 2200 BC. However, there are other theories as well. One revolves around a mysterious weapon called the Astra-Vidya, which the Harappans possessed. Ancient Indian scripture describes this invincible weapon thus: "It kills babies inside women's wombs," and "It can lay waste entire countries and nations for generations." The use of the Astra Vidya is followed by an explosion of bright light and fire, which consumes every living thing and destroys buildings across a large area. There's a striking similarity between the Astra Vidya and our modern nuclear weapons. The most fantastic theories claim that the Harappans established contact with an alien civilization and got their hands on an awesome weapon they did not know how to use. And by mishandling it, they may have destroyed their own civilization. Forgotten Kingdom in Tibet. Life in Tibet is inseparably linked with Buddhism, but it would be a mistake to assume that Buddhism already existed high in the Himalayan mountains at the very beginning of Tibetan history. If you're interested in the history of this Central Asian country, or to be precise, the western part called Nagari, you will sooner or later come across references to the Shangshung Kingdom and the ancient religion of Bon associated with it. According to surviving documents, this animistic religion was founded by Tompa Shenrab Mewach, also called Buddha Shenrab, who was abducted by a demon at the age of 13 and held captive for 13 years. When he was 26 years old, Shenrab's extraordinary abilities started to show themselves. He could prophesy and exorcise spirits, chase away evil and defeat demons. The legendary Tonpa Shenrab was distinguished by his extraordinary knowledge of astrology, as well as medicine, and is believed to be the author of the first written records in this field. Although we know that the Shangshung Kingdom was ruled by a total of 18 kings, no records have been preserved about their lives or names. Therefore, the mysterious Buddha Shenrab remains the most distinctive figure from this part of Tibetan history. Bon monasteries exist to this day. Their rituals differ from Buddhism in many details. They go from one stupa and monastery to another in a counterclockwise direction, and also spin their prayer wheels counterclockwise. The basic symbol of Bon is the Yongdrung, or swastika, which is shared with Buddhism. The OLMECS, the first Americans. The Olmec civilization is considered to be the predecessor of the better-known Mayan civilization. As is the case with the sudden disappearance of the Mayans, there are many questions surrounding the Olmecs, yet it's their arrival rather than their disappearance that's a subject of much speculation. Where did the Olmecs come from? The famous Olmec stone heads have an atypical physiology that's very unusual for this continent at the time, resembling instead the features of the inhabitants of Africa. The African facial traits on Olmec stone heads could reflect the result of a rare but not impossible genetic combination. According to another theory, they represent foreigners who came to the area by boat. Archaeological research has revealed that the Olmec classical period lasted from 1200 to 400 BC. Who were these people who built monumental statues with such unbelievable skill? Were they really the true inventors of the mathematical and written systems that were subsequently used by the Mayans? Many important inventions are attributed to the Olmecs, such as the use of the wheel and the hieroglyphic system. It's still not known what language they spoke, because the writings that have been discovered have yet to be deciphered. According to many historians, archaeologists and anthropologists, their level of knowledge was truly astounding. One possible explanation for the technological and cultural sophistication of this ancient culture could have been contact with an extraterrestrial entity. Some Olmec statues look as if they're observing the sky, waiting for something or someone to arrive. Native American legends say they're waiting for the return of the gods, who in the distant past had descended from heaven. CATALHOYK, mysterious city. In our search for ancient civilizations, we must next head to southeastern Turkey, where archaeologists have discovered what are probably the oldest human settlements on Earth. One of the best known of these settlements is CATALHOYK. The Rome of Neolithic times and a contemporary of the Minoan civilization are just some ways people have described this ancient site. By way of comparison, at the time when ancient Egypt was just at the dawn of its history, possibly the oldest human civilization had already existed for several thousand years in this Turkish settlement. The architecture of CATALHOYK, unlike the architectural style of European cities, was based on a honeycomb structure. The individual houses were accessible only from above, from their flat roofs. Around the year 5000 BC, something strange happened. The city was abandoned. According to one theory, this was due to climate change. The area around the city, which had previously been well watered by rivers, dried up and the land lost its fertility. A subsequent famine, in combination with various epidemics, might have caused the massive exodus. Another hypothesis suggests that the inhabitants believed in the afterlife and an intelligent universe. The use of hallucinogenic drugs, which can be seen depicted on the walls of city houses, and insights acquired through shamanic rituals might have convinced the leaders of the community to leave this place. To this day, it's not known how they left or where they went. Ancient cities of the Amazon. Most people imagine that Amazonia is an impenetrable jungle, one of the few places on Earth that have remained the same since ancient times. However, the idea that the only inhabitants of the rainforests are primitive native tribes has been fundamentally disproved by recent discoveries. There, buried in the dense tropical undergrowth, a combined team of Brazilian and American anthropologists has found the remains of ancient cities. This mysterious civilization reached its peak between 1200 and 1650 AD, when the cities in the area were populated by as many as 60,000 people. The fact that Amazonia was inhabited by an unknown civilization has been confirmed by satellite and aerial imagery that reveals not only the ruins of cities, but also geoglyphs very similar to those on the Peruvian Nazca Plains. The purpose of these structures remains a mystery. Some archaeologists claim that they were created for astronomical purposes. Other, more radical researchers say they were used for communication with extraterrestrial spacecraft. In the second half of the 17th century, this unknown civilization underwent an abrupt change. Scientists point out that this coincides with the time when the first Europeans started to venture into the depths of Amazonia, lured by the prospect of finding the legendary Golden City of El Dorado. Even now, the search for El Dorado has not ended, and many prospectors still hope that they will strike it lucky and stumble upon the legendary city paved with gold. Mystery of the Etruscans. Historians have been unable to establish exactly where the Etruscans came from. The Etruscan civilization was highly sophisticated and developed in the area of central Italy that's nowadays known as Tuscany. How it developed has remained something of a mystery, although modern historians believe the Etruscans were a people indigenous to the area. The Etruscans show developments in culture and technology from the 8th century BC, and their civilization lasted until the 2nd century BC. They founded city-states and spread out over a wide area of Italy, laying the foundations for the Romans, who were greatly influenced by them, to follow in their footsteps. The word Rome is itself of Etruscan origin. Where did such an unbelievable elite of humankind, with an absolutely original culture, their own language and exceptional skills, emerge from? How did their society develop? We still cannot answer many of these questions. The attitude of the Etruscans to both life and death is also remarkable. Like the Egyptians, they seem to have been obsessed with the afterlife. Wall paintings in the tombs of Etruscans with high social status give us a vivid picture of the demonic inhabitants of the realm of the dead. But in the end, not even the elaborate rituals of the Etruscans could protect the 12 Etruscan cities from attack by the Celts from the north and the Romans from the south. Their civilization is remembered today as one of the most remarkable, though it still holds many unsolved mysteries. Eden of DILMUN. DILMUN is the main island of the island nation of Bahrain, and also the Sumerian name of an ancient civilization which inhabited this important maritime link between Mesopotamia and the fertile valley of the Indus River, and managed to prosper for 2,000 years. We can assume from records left on clay tablets that this small piece of land served as a model for the biblical Eden. The Sumerian myth Enki and Ninkosag takes place on the wonderful island of DILMUN, where lions do not kill and wolves pose no threat to lambs. There is no grief or sorrow because there is no death or disease. In the early DILMUN period, the religious beliefs and practices were almost the same between DILMUN, Mesopotamia and Egypt. They believed in an afterlife, and they would bury their dead with their possessions in their graves. According to the first great work of literature, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the only person who survived Noah's flood, the hero Utnapishtim, was taken up to heaven, where he was granted eternal life. It's been suggested that this garden paradise was in fact a description of DILMUN. Archaeologists continue to uncover more and more graves. It's estimated that there are approximately 350,000 graves or tombs on the archipelago, many of them containing the remains of children's skeletons or the skeletons of snakes and monkeys. What is the truth about this place where everybody would have liked to live and where at the same time children were sacrificed to the gods? Secret of the Mayas. We have all heard of the Mayan civilization, yet the more we learn about this ancient culture that spanned southern Mexico, Belize, Guatemala and Honduras, the more questions arise. The Mayan temples were abandoned sometime around the year 830 AD, though we still don't know why. The origins of the Mayan people are a mystery as well. Where did this culture, with its amazing knowledge of calendars, mathematics and astronomy, come from? The Mayan calendar, which they sculpted in the stones and pyramids in places like Kukulkan, describes an astronomic alignment between stars. They evidently mark electromagnetic and vibrational changes in our planet. Equally amazing are the inscriptions on stone monuments describing prehistoric events that took place more than 400 million years ago. How is it possible they were able to see so far back in the history of the Earth? Let's go back to the question of where the Mayans came from. The chronicles Popol Vuh and Chilam Balam describe the arrival of the Mayans in their homeland. Both of these sources talk about a place called Tula, where the ancestors of the Mayas apparently lived in harmony. Tula has 4 dimensions: Eastern, Western, Heavenly, and Underworld. The Mayan term Tula means both the center of transcendental forces as well as a purely physical location. So is it possible that Tula in fact refers to the process of transcendental ascent, a way of accessing other worlds? When the Mayans wrote about other worlds, what did they mean? Were they describing the evolutionary steps of intelligent life on Earth? Or was it a description of events in space? Atlantis. In all the discussion about lost civilizations, the alpha and omega must surely be the mystery of Atlantis. The great philosopher and historian Plato first wrote about the civilization of Atlantis in the 4th century BC, which in itself is a strong argument in support of its existence. Plato wrote that Atlantis was a naval superpower that conquered much of Western Europe and Africa. However, after a failed attack on Athens, it sank to the bottom of the ocean in just one catastrophic day and night. Historians claim that Plato only wanted to present a model of an ideal society, as it is clear from scientific findings that no such civilization actually existed in 10,000 BC. What they don't mention, however, is that Plato wrote about Atlantis in a chapter that was devoted to history. When his contemporaries went to Egypt to discredit his accounts of history, they discovered instead columns engraved with stories about the lost city of Atlantis. Many researchers believe that the Egyptian civilization had its roots much further back in history. Could it be true that the Egyptians and their pyramids are the legacy of ancient Atlantis? According to these theories, the famous Sphinx in Giza has a secret hidden room called the Chamber of Records, which holds documents thousands of years old, proving that Atlantis existed. Apparently, it really was located somewhere to the west, probably in the Atlantic Ocean. Proponents of this theory even suggest that the cave paintings in Lascaux prove the existence of this advanced civilization. After the end of the last ice age, the sea level rose, and much island landmass undoubtedly disappeared as a result, including, many claim, Atlantis. Those who survived probably moved to either North Africa or Western Europe. Atlantis still remains a mystery and will no doubt continue to baffle historians for generations to come. Mysteries of ancient cultures. The fate of these long-vanished civilizations is still shrouded in myth and mystery. Some were struck by natural disasters, others were destroyed in wars, and for the rest, we are yet to find convincing explanations. Only time will tell how fitting or fanciful our ideas about the history of mankind were.